Hello and welcome to the Get Better in Chelmsford podcast with your hosts Richard Brinkley and myself, Tasha Katz. This is the podcast where we talk all about the no-nonsense side of marketing, where we champion Chelmsford-based businesses and entrepreneurs who are testing, learning and growing, and where we discover that the journey is often more exciting than the destination.
Gareth, welcome to the Get Better in Chelmsford podcast. You are the creative director of Spacio.
Yep.
And we're going to get to that. I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. But first off, because we have to, what does marketing mean for you? What is it?
Oh gosh. I mean, let's start with the easy ones, right? I've picked up a couple of phrases along the way, but the one that really sticks to me is that marketing is what you say it is, and branding is what they say it is. I've spent 10 years running my own brand design agency and thought a lot about, what branding means. And there's this kind of ethereal sense that brand is like a reputation. It's how someone else would describe the values and the integrity and the quality of what you do. Whereas your brand identity is just your logo, right? But brand is this, it's not, you don't own the brand in a sense, it's owned by the people who use the service. It's this ethereal thing that exists out there. But marketing is what we can do to try and inform and shape what that brand might be. It's our best intentions and what the information we put out there is. It's all the meaning that we try to attribute to an image or a logo in the mind of the public.
Probably the best answer we've had. I mean, you said a tricky one at the top. I mean, perhaps talk to us a little bit about how then that translates into your role as creative director at Spacio. Then are you going in there to help them with their marketing or their brand? What actions do you think speak loudest to either the marketing or brand?
Well, Spacio, in its most basic explanation, is an office interior design and build company. So we design and build office environments for big clients. I'm working on projects at the moment ranging from 100,000 up to 4 million. So some are really ambitious and some are much smaller. So my role as creative director within that, a lot of it is working in the business, actually working on the designs, working closely with the client to realize an environment that they might have in mind, or to inspire an environment, a working culture. I'll maybe come on to culture setting because that's more tied into that. But I'm also working on the business. So I'm looking at the brand identity of the business, how we communicate what we do, thinking about things like our irreducible truth. And when a business has been around for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, has been handed down, in a family or however it's come about, it'll often change its shape and its form and what it creates, for its client. And so sometimes that truth changes, and so you have to flex with that and say, let's go back and rethink, let's go back and what would it be like to state publicly for the very first time who we are and what is at the core of what we do. And that's a piece of work that I've been working on with Spacio, and I think we're fairly close. I think someone said that, I think it was George Lewis who said that our creative work is 5% inspiration, 10% perspiration, and 85% justification. And as a creative person, I think sometimes you instinctively land, especially if you've been around the block a few times and you've seen enough, there are moments when you instinctively land on something that you know completely and utterly to be right. but oftentimes you're way ahead of your client. So it takes a little time to allow the client to catch up to where you are. But I think that for Spacio, I would say that we create remarkable places to work.
And in pursuit of that one truth, as you say, the remarkable spaces to work, what, from a practical sense, are you guys doing within Spacio to get to that one truth? What are the day-to-day actions or activities or the process? If people are out there thinking, how do I get to that? I don't want to just, if we take the kind of 5% inspiration pieces, that's a bit of a hope that it will come in some respects. So there must be a little bit of a process there. And given that your background is hugely creative as well as experienced in running business, when you get into Spacio, what does a roadmap look like? What does a process look like? How do you get to discover your one truth?
For me, it's a process of listening, deep listening and thinking about aspiration and vision, talking to the business leader about describe the business you want to build. What does that thing look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? In coming up with creating remarkable places to work, what we found is, and as I've been in this industry years ago. I spent, when I came out of art school, I went into interior design, commercial interior design quite early, and spent 15 years in that field. So it's a strange thing for me to come full circle. That's 25 years later, and the workplace has changed almost unrecognizably. And then things like COVID and the emergence of home working and hybrid working and video conferencing and all those things have changed hugely. And also, different generations coming up, Gen Zs, and the next generation, Generation Alpha, the first generation that grows up with AI as, intrinsic part of who they are and their experience, changed what the workplace looks like. But also, I think companies and businesses have changed, and there is a big drive now towards companies that are net positive. It's not just about going into work, sitting at a desk, churning your way through the week to earn money for someone else in order to pay for your drinks on a Friday night or to put food on the table or whatever. But there is a generational shift now where people are coming into the workplace because they want to make a difference. They want to contribute to something bigger than themselves or their own pay packet. And that changes the culture. That changes the atmosphere of what work looks like. And it changes what progressive companies are looking to offer employees beyond the salary package to attract the very, very, very best people. So now we have workplaces that are described as, they have a vibrancy score. There's amenity rich, resort-based working. I can talk through some of these if you like. Vibrancy would be, can we calculate, is our workplace, can you hear a pin drop? Gone are the days where you say, right, everyone needs to be at their desk at 9 o'clock or whatever, and everyone needs to be head down focused in little cubicles. I mean, I remember years ago designing an interior design for a huge tech company in Bristol, and it was cubicle after cubicle after cubicle where an employee came in, that was their marked space with their family photos or whatever, and they were expected to sit at that desk, head down and work all day. But now there are, we moved from that kind of working to kind of activity based, and so you'd have collaboration spaces, you'd have breakout spaces, you go to the place in your environment that suited the piece of work that you needed to do, and that massively changed things. But now it's, in light of COVID, it's become much more relationship based. So it's about creating spaces where people can connect and feel belonging and feel that there's more to work than just coming up and doing your work. But actually, if you spend time with some of the best colleagues an idea will spark, something will happen. And that comes out of a relationship that doesn't happen over Zoom or Teams. It happens when people come together.
And thinking back to where you define marketing, or your view of it in terms of that split between marketing and what we do, brand, thoughts, emotions, and what people feel, how much is that now office environment connected, intrinsically linked to those things, i.e. we're marketing a better space to our employees so they come in and behave in those, and I'm going to say better ways. That's not going to be true in all instances, but where they're collaborating, therefore work product is maybe better too, and then the brand is better. How is that intrinsically linked?
It's difficult to measure, but it's evidentially it's all there. You know, one of the things that's coming out in sort of new trends is resort based, and the idea of, it's going to sound outrageous, but the idea is to treat your workforce as if they were tourists, and provide an environment that is so extraordinary that they would write home about it. Right? And so the language that people use around work changes. How can I put this? I don't want to go to work. I don't want a job. In fact, I gave up going to work. When I started my own company, one of the first values was like, we're not here to work. There's no jobs here. However, if you want to come in here all day, every day, and invest time improving our clients' reputation, finding tools, solving problems, creating content and imagery and graphics and posters, and making documentaries or radio adverts, if you want to invest your very best self in producing this extraordinary stuff for the client to increase their reputation and to build something that we can be proud of and they can be proud of, then I'll pay you a salary, I'll give you a holiday benefits, I'll do, all of those things. But the idea, the notion of this should be work, in inverted commas. And I think the more that we can do that, the more that we can encourage our clients and create environments where people want to be, that they look forward to Mondays. I look forward to, I've got a great team that I work with. I've got some direct reports who are young and enthusiastic and energetic, but at times they've been sort of bogged down by this idea of and I'm like, no, come on, let's change this culture. Let's not be thermometers that adjust to the temperature of the room so they reflect the prevailing atmosphere. Let's be thermostats. Let's actually set the temperature. Let's change, and let's not just do it for ourselves, but let's do it for our clients. So when we have those early meetings with clients, we say, what are your expectations? What are you looking for? They might say, well, we've got 300 staff, we've got 14 meeting rooms, we've got a boardroom, how many offices? I'm like, but what about the culture? What is the atmosphere like? Is it positive? Is it engaging? Is it vibrant? Is it energetic? Would that change the way that your company feels? Are there tools that we can put in place? Can we invest in this environment to shift the entire mindset and reframe what working looks like to your staff? And how would that impact not only on their day-to-day activity, but how would that impact on your client? So in many ways, what the work I'm trying to do is not for our client, but it's for our client's client. And if you can somehow reframe what it means to turn up at the office every day into being that, then in terms of marketing, being this ethereal stuff that you put out, the fact that someone comes back and says, oh, I work for Spacio and it's extraordinary and I can't wait for Monday, well, that becomes marketing, right? Mm. It becomes marketing just by a shift in the culture.
There's so much there to unpack. I think we've touched on so many different aspects, right? It's marketing, it's branding, it's culture, it's purpose, it's purpose driven, not the idea of I'm just working to get my paycheck. Uh-huh. And I think there is also a journey that you take people on. So you mentioned earlier that, you might have these ideas and you're 5, 10, 15 steps ahead of the client that you're working with. And it's trying to bring them closer to that. But with the information that they already have, the goals that they already have, right? It's trying to get them to contextualize and illustrate exactly what it is they want to achieve, and bring them to that point where you are. I think that's fascinating. In that process, because you talk a lot about also the wider team, that everybody in that workplace is benefiting from that space. Are you only talking to the business leaders, or are there any kind of focus groups? Do you kind of get a gauge on what teams look for?
Yeah, we often run, in fact, almost for every client we work with, we run workshops, not just to hear from everyone, but have the opportunity to share some of the ideas, the different ways. Because most people, unlike me, who's reading articles and investigating new ways of working, going out to various different expos around kind of workplace design, and so you're introducing ideas that maybe people haven't heard of, and it's essential for us to. It's not just top-down information, but we get in there in the trenches and really spend time. And that's why I said earlier on about listening. It's deep listening, and then little moments of inspiration, and then occasionally throw a grenade in the middle of the bomb and say, one of my favourite phrases for all my creative career has been, well, we could do that, but what if we did this? And so there is that opportunity within all of that to offer up something that maybe people haven't not only thought about, but even imagined that they could or had permission to even contemplate.
Yeah. Can I ask, prompts the question about like the brief. So when someone typically comes to you, because you've described something that's quite expansive and arguably is way beyond, transcends entirely new tables and chairs. So what does a brief look like? Where does someone normally start, and what mindset are they in? Because it feels like that you're having to take them on quite a journey to get them to buy into something that can be, we could do that, but what if we did this?
Well, we have, in a way, a bit of a head start, because if you're going to invest £1 million, £2 million, £250,000, depending on how big your business is, in a new environment, then change is already at work. So I love change. I absolutely adore it. And so for me, it's just the most extraordinary privilege to step into a business that's changing, because it's growing, because it's developing, because it's having to shift to respond to whatever its marketplace is doing. So you are stepping into a situation where all these things are already in flux, and a lot of people are feeling very uncomfortable. And it's great to be able to come in as a problem solver. I mean, that's basically, just underpins my job. And that's really exciting, because you can come in and you say, I've seen this before, been down this road before. We might have some tools, we might have some things that we can help you to shape your business. But you are stepping into a time in that company of flux and of change. And that just offers up loads of opportunities to introduce new ideas.
And how much of that change is because they want people back in the office? If we can just address that, in the sense that you mentioned COVID earlier, a lot of people went to that remote piece. You gave a lovely narrative about coming into the office and what you could build and all those kind of things.
Yeah.
But are many of those challenges at the moment where people come to go, right, I just need to get everyone back in because I'm not seeing it work, or I just want people back in? Like, how many briefs exist like that out there at the moment, and how do you start to even motivate a workforce to come back into an environment that they're...
Well, interestingly, one of the bigger challenges that a number of our clients have faced recently is that we've created environments that too many people want to come back into. We did a project in Brentwood, and even this, the CEO they're in kind of once every 4 weeks, and now they're in 3-4 days a week. So it is still a thing. But I think that one of the things that COVID taught us is that we are social creatures, and we are at our absolute best when we're sat in the same room, being isolated. The instance of mental health and various other things went through the roof, and so being isolated doesn't suit us. I think, there's a lot of thought around working from home and whether people are lazy. I don't believe that. I don't believe that motivated people are lazy. And I think if you're building a great culture to work in, if you're concerned as much about your people as your client or the bottom line, then you'll create an environment in which people thrive, actually. And so the clients, don't forget, we find clients because they're actively looking to change. We don't go out to a company that's been in a building for the last 30 years and say, we think you should change. They've already taken some of those steps. And at the briefing stage, we're already hearing we want to create an environment that people want to work in. And so we have that advantage. The wind is already blowing. We just, the sail's already full. We just jump in with that. But it is a narrative that we're listening to a lot. But what we're finding is that actually there is an appetite for people to be in work. And we're creating environments that reflect that. There's a phrase that's been around a little while now since COVID, which is res-immercial. So the environments are looking much more. I mean, here we are in the studio with, plants and soft furnishings and that kind of stuff. So we're finding that more and more we're able to create environments that are amenity rich. The great coffee machines, free bacon sandwiches every third Friday or whatever it is. There are all these things. Alongside my branding agency, I ran an art gallery. As an artist myself, I tutor life drawing at Chelmsford Theatre once a month, and I have my own art practice. And so having invited a number of artists to show at the gallery, we're able to now to offer art consultancy because we want to create remarkable places to work. It's not magnolia and desks as far as the eye can see, but actually it's beautiful pieces of furniture, great spaces for people to gather and collaborate, the different areas that create different zones. We'll even work with companies to create a signature scent that can actually be, put in through the air conditioning systems, and so that you walk into a space, you think, if you ever walked into an Aesop or into Lush or whatever, there are places that you attribute quality to because of the scent. So we are going way above and beyond to create spaces that, because the best talent will go where those facilities are, and that they sound, kind of very kind of modern or whatever, but it's actually perfect. It does not ever, I mean, I remember the years when if you were selling your house, the best way to do that was to bake a loaf of bread, so that people walked in and they associate, that smell of homeless. Well, why shouldn't we do that in our workplaces? It's pennies really to do it. Mm. Great art, sculpture, great facilities, great HR policies. I was reading about Netflix. They posted all of their kind of HR policy in a groundbreaking move a few years ago, and so they'll, their holiday policy is take as much time away as you think is appropriate. Just figure out what that is. Treat people like grown-ups. Their expenses policy has been reduced to something like do whatever you believe to be in the best interests of the company. It's just this kind of thinking, you've got to look to some of those giants like Apple and Google and Nike and those and Netflix to see that the way that the workforce is being treated is changing dramatically.
There's a shift, a massive shift, and you kind of already touched on it from the start of the episode that, when you first started out in this business, it was cubicles,
Yeah.
cubicles, everybody confined and isolated. And then, like you say, we've seen this cultural and professional shift. And over time, we've come back to, no, people are, like you said, social creatures. And we do our best work when we are collaborating, when we have those spaces to inspire and motivate one another. I think just that in itself is really fascinating. And like you say, with Netflix, for example, they're kind of giving their staff that autonomy to, we trust you. We've hired you for a reason. And I think it brings us back to perhaps the core of a brand also just, it starts with the people working there.
Yes.
And we're talking about emotions and senses and feelings and everything being in that workspace. If you've got a strong team that are motivated and they have a purpose and they feel supported and treated like adults, the talented adults that they are, they're going to go out there and promote business themselves anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was reading something just the other day about, the rise of AI, and that it's people coming together and collaborating and finding that common purpose, which is at the heart of it. And this idea that one of the things that we might need to do with AI as it comes along and strips a lot of stuff out is to provide people with this idea of universal basic income. Because the government might just have to underwrite the cost of everyone being able to rent, being able to eat, being able to have basic services, right? So imagine a world, if you like, where everyone receives from the government a universal basic income, which is enough to live off. So if you want to earn more, if you want to do more and spend more and do more things, then you would go and find employment. What would employment look like if you were there because you wanted to be? You didn't have to be. All your basic needs are covered. What would car insurance companies look like if everyone working for them chose that industry because they love it and because they want to contribute towards it, because it will actually add something to their life? This idea that you work 40 hours a week to earn enough money to enjoy the time outside of work. That I can't get my head around that. That you're incentivizing people to not be at work and to invest all of their enjoyment of life in somewhere other than the place that you're providing. What would it look like if those 40 hours of the week were some of the best hours that we get to live around people we admire and like and love and do activities that come up from the core of who we are and give of the best of who we are, so that work becomes this, I don't know, maybe that's idealistic, but it is. I mean, there are jobs that need doing that maybe don't have that. But what if every job was filled with someone saying, I chose this and I can bring this to it, and this plays a part of my life. I don't have to carve up my life. I'd go and do that in order to be able to do this.
Yeah, I guess it is idealistic, but you're still describing a mindset that people can adopt and an attitude that they can change. Yeah. That ultimately, you might not have chosen the job per se, but you can choose the environment that you create, the thermometer.
Yeah.
You can be that guy, right? You don't have to be
the thermostat.
Yeah, the thermostat. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be that. So I think,
yeah,
whilst we might never quite get there, we can choose to behave differently.
And I think if our businesses are not idealistic, then what on earth are we doing? Spacio exists to create remarkable places to work. Not just okay places, or just places, but remarkable places. And what we hope is that as we continue to build a reputation for that as people respond to our marketing, that the voice and that brand grows, that Spacio becomes increasingly a destination space for companies who crave that shift. So they come to us and say, we've heard that you do this. We've seen you do this for these companies. Can you do that for us? I mean, that's the best marketing, right? That's the best place to be. That people seek you out. And you can... I had a conversation years ago with Nick Knight, the fashion photographer. I had an incredible opportunity to meet him, just by chance. And I said to him, you're the great Nick Knight. It must be amazing. People must come to you. The brief you get, do they just give you carte blanche? Right? Because you are Nick Knight. I mean, he's probably the most creative fashion photographer there's ever been. I mean, he's got pieces that are owned in the permanent collection of the National Portrait Gallery and work in galleries all around the world, front cover of Vogue all around the world. His work is iconic. And if you know that stuff, then Nick Knight is probably the best. So people come to you and they give you carte blanche. And he said, I wouldn't work with them if they did. He said, I want to work alongside people who are invested in their business, who wrestle with it day to day, who sweat blood and tears for the campaigns that they're trying to put together, but they just can't get to where they want to go. There is a gap between their ambition and the realization of that ambition, and they cast a net out and they realize it's me that's missing. The work that I do is uniquely placed in that space between where they are and where they want to be. And so they seek me out and say, we've got this campaign, we're passionate about it, we've hit a roadblock, we cannot seem to get to where we want to go, can you help us? And he's like, that I can get involved in. He said, I take on 25% of the work that comes to the studio. So he could be 4 times the size. His studio could employ 4 times as many people. He could take home 4 times as much money. He's not interested.
Isn't that the crux of any business, right? What he's, that we want to be here. How do we get there?
Yeah.
We have this gap.
Yeah.
In comes Spacio or in comes X business. I think just that mindset, that...
Well, even better, just sorry to interrupt,
yeah.
Even better is to say, we've got that gap. Who can help us? And then they know, hang on, I've heard of someone who does this. And that they actually seek you out. I think that's the sweet spot for any organization, I think.
How given the narrative of the world, and we talked about everything from net zero and positive cultures and all of those kind of bits and pieces, given our experiences within retail, talked about I've been in shops that I guess are trying to do some of the things we do in office environments, make me feel good, comfortable in a buying mode, smell nice, all those kind of wonderful things. Given that we're conditioning ourselves to expect good culture, positive interaction, creativity, good environments, how long is it before Spacio isn't a choice someone can make, but it's you have to consult with Gareth on this. You have to get this environment because we're going to become so accustomed to it. It's going to be so part of the fabric of a lot of businesses or brands moving forward. What happens to the businesses that are not paying attention to this, even if it's just the basics around culture?
I don't think it's Spacio that leads that. I think we are responding to a shift in what humanity is seeking. I think these younger generations coming through are demanding better of us. And I think those companies that don't listen will begin to reflect that the workplace already is incredibly competitive, and people are looking to. I think younger people are saying, "This is my one life. This is my one shot." Excuse me. So I think they lead it. I think we listen to them. And those employers who don't do that find it more and more difficult to attract the people that can achieve for them what they want to achieve. I think they will be forced to change.
Well, they have, right? Because if you look at the 80s and the cubicles, we no longer have that workplace. People, I mean, I don't know anybody that would want to go to an office space like that these days. So I think that shift in employer over employee is now much more balanced, isn't it? Yeah. It's you go to a job interview and there is a more equal footing now. What I want to offer you my skills, but what can I get in return? Not in that sense of greed, but it is literally, like you say, this is my life. I want to enjoy it. And I'm going to be spending 40 hours a week of my life with this company. What can I get out of that? And then vice versa, the employer is looking at that employee saying, this person has great skills. I really want them on board. So what is it that they can offer me? Can they give that to me? And so there is this give and take in that relationship now. Yeah,
my son is 18 this week, and he went out to his first interview, and I said to him, just remember that you're also interviewing them. And if we can create remarkable places for people to work, then I don't think they need to worry about their workforce. They can focus on their business and get the best people and actually, you know what? Have fun, enjoy it, you know, to do stuff that moves you deeply, motivates you and makes you think, God, I mean, I love my weekends, but I miss my team. Actually, I do miss my team at weekends. So when it comes around to Monday, I'm like, hell yes. Monday, let's do this. And great clients. Yeah. And I think businesses attract the business they deserve, you know, and if you are creating extraordinary things for people, then you will find extraordinary people to work with. So, you know, the relationships, I'm quite an emotional bloke anyway. You've seen me get emotional over the last 20 minutes or so, because I really feel this stuff. And I've had to come to terms with the fact that there are times when I'm in front of a client and it gets really emotional for me. And I've been embarrassed about it for years, but now I've discovered that actually clients love that. They're like, wow, you know, I feel like I'm part of their team and I want them to feel like part of our team. And because this is important, it means something. Because it's people, right?
That emotion carries through on the individual person to person, like you say, when you're working with that client. Having that kind of connection is really, really crucial, I think, to a successful working relationship. But then also that larger brand, because it comes back to brand ties into people's emotions again. So if you are on that person to person level, getting that, you can build that as a brand as well. I think that's just really.
Yeah, I think branding has had a quite a negative, and maybe for good reason, you know, reputation as being spin, of being, you know, marketing being spin and stuff. But I think there are enough businesses out there now who just genuinely want to make the world a better place. And it becomes an absolute joy then to work with customers of ours who believe the same. And you sit in that meeting and think, we are on the same page here. We are looking to create something extraordinary for people. Something that they will remark about.
That's such a brilliant way to round up our conversation, Gareth. It's been absolute pleasure speaking with you so much. And I think there was still a huge amount yet to unpack. So where can our listeners find you and Spacio and the work that you guys are doing?
Oh, all the usual places. Spacio, Spacio. Wouldn't take you long to find us from that. On LinkedIn, you'll find Spacio Limited. It's probably the best place. That's where we hang out most. Well, I mean, to be fair, we're hanging out most with our client. But yeah, on Instagram and various other places. But we're based here in Chelmsford, and got, you know, a huge number of clients here across Essex and East London. So yeah, it's not difficult to find us. Well, thank you, Gareth. Honestly, it's a pleasure. And yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You've been listening to the Get Better in Chelmsford podcast with your hosts, Richard Brinkley and Tasha Katz. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to like and subscribe. And remember, you can tune into the full series wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening.